We're going to get started here in a few minutes. Today, we're talking about a program that Rod is running that's been extremely successful. So we're going to hear how he did that and then tie it into some, well, I want to talk about fractional CMO. That's where I started. And Rod's like, no, talk about this first. It's like, all right, you're the guest. We'll talk about whatever you want.
No, you can definitely talk about fractional CMO. I love fractional CMO. It's kind of what I do now, pretty much full time, which I love.
That's awesome. How many companies are you working with right now?
On a strategic level, half a dozen. So wow. Yeah, solid. And yeah, it's good. It's good. I mean, it's like, we can get into it, but yeah, it's like roughly about 2 hours a week per company. But it's not like it's not like it's scheduled. It's kind of on, on
demand.
Yeah, on access. It's like, hey, I have an issue here. I have a question here, and they just ask questions and we deal with it as need be. And yeah, it averages at about 2 hours. I mean, some of them are really quiet, and other ones are a little bit more demanding. But yeah, it works out really well. So I spend over 6 clients. I roughly spend about 12 hours a week on those.
That's not bad at all.
And it's good. It's good revenue too. Like we got into value-based pricing in a big way this year and decided to detach time from money. And as a result, rose our fees to four grand minimum. So $4,000 pounds. Yeah, because it's a little different. I think it works out to be about $6,500 US. I don't know,
nice.
Something like that. So that's the starting point, and that's just for access. And then on top of that, we layer a whole bunch of other things. So yeah, it's highly profitable. I worked it out to, it's about like something like 95% margin. So very, very
good
happy.
Margin.
Yeah, no, it's kind of what we want, right? So yeah.
Well, what's funny is with margin, I always explain this to small businesses, is it's like you need 2 to 3 times the margin that you think you need to operate, because if you're not getting that, you're wasting time.
It took me an absurd amount of time to realize that the way we keep score in business is with margin. And it's kind of like, hey, it's kind of like playing a game for almost 20 years and then realizing, oh, you're supposed to put the ball in the net, right? It's like, yeah, that's kind of what we're supposed to do. And that just, like, I don't know, some things are just kind of like they're obviously staring you in the face. And it's interesting because one of the we belong to, our accountants are actually design agency and agency specific accountants, which is amazing. They're accountants based in London, and they basically put out a challenge, and they said, look, we want all of our clients to generate at least 50% margin gross, right? And we're like, okay, well, that's interesting. So what is our margin? And we looked, that was kind of the first time we actually looked at it. Did our variable cost, our cost of goods sold over top of our fixed cost, really understanding how much it costs to deliver and fulfill on every customer, and identified that our margins were close to about 35%. And so that was,
that's the standard. I was going to say, I'm like, I was at the same point, because I was, 35%, that's pretty decent. And it's like, no, it's not.
Yeah. No, it's not, not at all. And then we kind of realized, that's why it feels a little bit like we've been repeating the same year over and over and over again, because these margins haven't allowed us to properly invest. They haven't allowed us to expand. They haven't allowed us to get more people on board, to advertise, So the margins are real. They suffocate a business, right, if they're not managed correctly. And so it became our challenge to at least hit the 50. And they also said, they do a benchmark report. They call it bench press, which is excellent, by the way. And I'd be more than happy to share it. I've shared a few reports that they did in the past. They survey like 500 agencies, some $1 million and below in annual turnover, and the rest $1 million and above in annual turnover. They produce 2 different reports. And they reported that agencies that make $1 million or less generate roughly 36% in gross margin on average. And then agencies that do $1 million or more generate about 40%. So not that much better. So we set
Yeah.
we decided to pick up this goal in earnest, and they said, hey, you should be doing 50%. And we said, hey, how can we actually go about getting more than that? Because we got a lot of making up to do, because we've been working for like 19 years making measly margins. How can we actually make up some time? Look, a lot of this revolves around me recently turning 50. Not so recently, by the way, but recently enough in my and I know you just recently turned 40, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, last 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Happy belated.
No, 4 weeks ago. Oh, I'm all right. 40 in 1 month.
Well done. Anyway, yeah, so I turned 50, and yeah, awesome. Birthday's all around. And I turned 50, and man, my whole perspective changed, because it was like, I'm in the middle. I'm at the halfway point. Like, because I've always envisioned myself saying, oh, I want to like be finished by the time I'm 65. I probably won't, now that I realize I really like work. And that's one. And number two, I got a lot of making up to do. So, for two reasons, I probably have to go a little further. But anyway, maybe not. The point being is that I looked moving forward, like I've been in business for now 20 years. If I have like to spend another 20 years, what am I going to do with that 20 years? What am I going to do differently? How am I going to actually take what I learned and apply the learnings, as opposed to just repeat the same year over and over again? So we set ourselves a goal. And I would argue that's probably the most important thing we did is, and by the way, I have our mutual friend, Ryan Dice, to thank for this, because what we did is we joined Scalable and the Founders Board. And they challenged us to stop looking kind of month to month, but instead look 12 quarters ahead, right? 3 years ahead. And so it's like, now all of a sudden, when you have that ability to look 3 years ahead, it really changes how you approach planning. And you start thinking a lot bigger. And we set ourselves a target of turning our top line revenue into our bottom line profit. And we're on our way. What we have managed to do with two of our services, we have three main areas of service. Two of them are now making over 90% margin. And they account now for over 50% of our business revenue. And the remaining amount, which accounts for just shy of 50%, unfortunately, is the kind of traditional agency services that we did for the last 20 years, which is, the type: SEO, paid traffic, website design, email marketing, that type of stuff.
Hey, Rod, just because I never did the intro. Do you mind if we pause for
You
like
were
1
just
second?
gabbing. I'm sorry.
I know you were on a roll, and I was like, I don't want to stop you, but we're 5 minutes behind. Cameron, you want to do the intro? We'll launch into it.
Yeah, of course. All right. Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to Agencies Talk. If you're new, I know I see a few familiar faces. If you're new, this is Digital Marketer's weekly talk show where we get the chance to sit down with agency professionals and talk about what's going on in their world, what they're passionate about, as we were just hearing, and the journey that they have taken to get to that success. Today, we have Rod Solar. Welcome. He is the co-founder of LiveseySolar. I believe that's how you say it, right? And
LiveseySolar, but that's okay.
Oh, excuse me. And it's okay. And acts as the fractional CMO for their clients. He's been on a mission to double the size of 150 cataract and refractive surgery practices. That's incredible. He told us that the best way to achieve this is by applying proven frameworks to discover and leverage the hidden growth opportunities in the very best practices. He is passionate about digital marketing, as you guys have seen. So I promise this is going to be a good one today. As a reminder, if you're able to, please turn on your cameras. We love to see your smiling faces. As always, have fun and engage in the chat. If there are any questions at all, please use the Q&A tool at the bottom to make sure that we get those answered for you guys. And as always, we're joined by Mark de Grasse, president of DigitalMarketer and host for today's talk. So without further ado, Mark, take it away.
Thank you very much, Cameron. And we were already chatting, Rod and I, about margins, which I think is a good place to start, because I think it's a really overlooked factor. And it's something that, we all kind of consider ourselves startups a lot of times, because I'm going to figure this out. But if you don't consider margins like right off the bat, then you're going to end up spinning your wheels and, being on this kind of plateau of like constant struggle, which is when I had my agency for about 6 years, I actually did the calculation and mine was 35%. And I realized that if I scaled it to $1 million, which is always the goal, I'd be still at 35%, making almost the same money, just having to manage a bunch of people. And so I ended up, not scaling and just staying in the path until I came to DigitalMarketer, and now I teach marketing. But Rod, I'll go ahead and let you keep on going. Actually, just to kind of do a summary, maybe just like a synopsis of the importance of margin, and then kind of go into how you discovered when you hit 50 that you want to make more money.
Right. Yeah. Let's make more money. How about that? Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, just in summary, real quick, for those of you who missed it, I've been in business for 20 years. I turned 50 a little while ago. And I thought to myself, do I want to repeat the last 20 years, or do I want to make the 20 years next year, 20 years better? And maybe even make it less than 20 years. Wouldn't that be a nice option? And when thinking about that, we kind of opened up our eyes and started thinking, well, what are a few things that we need to do? Number one, we need to figure out what is standard, so we can actually look at our numbers and be encouraged to look at how we're doing right now, so that we can understand, okay, here's where we are, where do we want to go? And so benchmarks really helped with that. I was sharing with Mark earlier that agencies, at least in the UK, make 36% margin. And I'll explain what margin is as a concept later on, if you like, in as simple terms as I can. And agencies over $1 million make about 40%. And that may sound like a lot, but it isn't. It really isn't, because out of that margin, you have to contribute to so many things. You have to contribute to fixed costs, right? Your overhead, rent if you pay it, staff. You have to, put, marketing into that. Anything you want to do with your business, you got to contribute it from the margin. And so clearly, whatever's left over as a net is a consequence of that margin. The bigger the gross margin, the bigger the net, right? And so, understanding that, we decided to heed the advice of our accountants who specialize in design agencies. And they said, hey, you guys should be making 50% minimum. And we were like, wow, we're only making about 35. That sucks. And so on that, together with a 3-year planning process that I've taken on through the Founders Board with Ryan and Roland and Richard, all good, well familiar names in DigitalMarketer. They helped us set our sights towards a 12-quarter plan, which has us taking our top line revenue and turning it into our bottom line profit in the span of 12 quarters, 3 years. And that's changed everything. The mindset has completely changed, and now we're on a completely different path, and a much better one at that. I'm looking forward to potentially selling the agency in potentially 5 years as an option. Maybe I'll love it. Maybe I'll just be like, this is such an awesome agency now that I fall in love with it again, and I'd rather just psychologically purchase it from myself and that would be fine. But it's great to have that option, because time is not infinite, right? Time's the thing that we really, really need to take care of. Money we can make, and now we've kind of realized how to make it more. But time is something that's escaping every single day. So there we are. That's the summary.
I love that. Well, and the cool thing is, when you start worrying about margin, you start to think about systemization and automation. And, with the dawn of AI that's currently happening, a lot of people are scared. But, just with that number, that the average is 36% for under $1 million agencies and only 40% for over $1 million agencies, it's like, we have to automate. Like we've actually, the cost of running an agency is much, much higher than people think, just because a lot of it's, IP and conceptual, and the execution. We just think, the execution is just going to happen. But to date, it's been a really expensive process. And with the turnover of agencies, it makes it even more important that you maintain margin all the time.
You know what the biggest cost that we overlooked is paying ourselves.
Yes. Your hourly rate is $1.
It's like, we're supposed to make money from this venture. Yeah. So again, it took me an absurd amount of time to realize all these things, but both Founders Board and the accountancy were telling us, hey, you guys got to pay yourselves. Like, you're not creating, like, basically by not paying yourself, you're creating this artificial sort of health dome around your agency, thinking you're doing a lot better than you actually are, because you're thinking, I'm saving money, right? I'm just plowing it back into the business. But the reality is the position that you're in psychologically when you're not paying yourself enough is a position of scarcity. It's a position of need and frustration, and a position of, always being in lack. It's imagine like you're dieting for straight 20 years, right? Like, and you're just like starving after 20 years, right? So it's like, yeah, and then all of a sudden you have money mismanagement issues, because then it's like, I'll spend big on this, and I'll spend big on this, and I'll take these big 10,000 pound vacations, and it's like, oh, where'd the money go? So instead, we decided to kind of like look at this a little bit more holistically and decide, okay, we gotta spend money on our salary, and we have to start paying ourselves. And so we initially just paid ourselves a little bit more, right? We were just kind of paying the tax rate, just enough to basically pay a tiny amount of tax. You know how you do that. I hope everybody understands how to do that, at least. Is, you just pay yourself just under the amount that is taxable, right? The rest you take in dividends. Problem with that is that dividends sometimes happen and sometimes they don't. So especially with 35% margins, they don't happen very often. So what we did is we just immediately started paying ourselves what we would normally start to make. I would say, let's be honest, about 50% of what we'd normally start to make.
I was going to say, I'm like,
No, not immediately. 50% of what we would, have our market rate, and then have slowly increased it. And now we're finally at the rate where we think, okay, this is about 75%. So we're moving it up. And over time, as we get more and more confident, we will increase it even more. But that's really the aim, really, is to, start benefiting from what you're doing, not just like one day in the long distant future, but today.
Yeah, I think the instant you start collecting money, that's when you need to start thinking about this. Not in 12 months when you're like, oh, I'm going to get up and running. We're just hustling right now. We're just going to keep on hustling, make sure we're stable, and then we'll start worrying about planning. Whereas, Roland's approach and the whole scalable founders war approach is, no, think about selling this company today, and then start preparing for that sale today. And the only way anybody's going to take your company seriously is if you include that payroll for yourself, because that's just a big lie, and on top of that, you don't want to confuse the tax implications of paying yourself versus the business implications, because those two get really skewed, because a lot of companies keep two sets of books. One's for tax savings, the other's like how you're supposed to operate. But that's a heavy lift, especially when you're new. So you end up just leaning on the one that you have to do, which is the tax one, and then your entire perception of the business gets skewed. And now, if you do go to sell it, you're going to get a lot of questions that you're not going to be able to answer about, like, well, how much do you pay yourself? Oh, I pay myself $0. Like, okay, I don't like that.
That's nutty. And the crazy thing about it too is I'll be totally honest, is that over the last 20 years, it has not been, it's been a few times where I've thought to myself, what am I doing here? Like, I thought to myself, like, think about the opportunity cost, because I know I would be very, very valuable anywhere else, and I would be getting paid, right? Mm-hmm. And what that does is, it, like I was talking about, the psychology of it really is, it has you always looking to the greener grass. And when you're in that state, you aren't fully in, you're not committed, right? You're not burning your ships behind you and, full steam ahead, let's make this work. Instead, you're kind of half in, half out, living in this like, oh, maybe I could do this one day. Maybe I could do, double down on what I'm doing right now. But at the end of the day, you're kind of half awake while you're, up and around, and you're, or half asleep when you're up and around and half awake when you're sleeping. It just doesn't really work. So
well, you're in survival. That's what you're doing. You're like, well, I would worry about this, but I got to make payroll in a couple of weeks. So I can't worry about planning. I can't worry about the future. I can't worry about anything else. I just got to worry about making money today. And it ends up, like you're saying, you're never able to cruise, and you're never able to feel confident about what you're doing. Kind of reminds me, I was watching one of those meditation things on Netflix, and it was talking about how ducks actually keep half of their brain on all the time. Same thing with dolphins, where they don't sleep. They only half of their brain sleeps at a time. The other half is actually working on surviving. Mm-hmm. And so that's actually really similar to your standard marketing agency, where you're like, okay, I really want to rest and I want to, enjoy what I built. But on the other side, you're constantly scanning for, what's going to take me out. Because, you were just talking about just the standard margin, but you have things like COVID happen, and you have things like hailstorm taking out trillions of dollars in Italy, and Greece is on fire, and blah 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 blah, and you can't predict this stuff, and you will have to weather it. So unless your plan is just fold immediately, then you gotta get this stuff in place. So I think that's, if you could realize it right now, you're going to start doing a big service for yourself and your employees too, because they can sense when you're stressed.
Absolutely.
They're not dumb. Oh man, Rod is stressed right now. Like everybody.
Actually, Mark, that is such a good point, because I'm actually a nicer person now. No, seriously, 3 years ago I was a dick. I was just kind of just a little resentful of my business, right? It was just thinking it's like a chain. It's like I'm a prisoner to it, because I didn't have an option. I'd totally bought into the sunk cost fallacy of just going, well, I've spent 15, 18, 19 years, how could I possibly ditch it now? That would be crazy, right? But what that does is it just creates this feeling of being trapped. And that's what I didn't maybe I should have gone to therapy or something like that. I didn't need therapy. I actually just needed goals, and just an ability to kind of look beyond myself and go, hey, we could be doing something a little bit differently here. And actually, this doesn't have to be a repeat of the same year again and again. It can actually be completely different. And it now is. And as a result of that, and, ask any of my team, I got 9 people working with me, ask any of them, and they're all like, yeah, Rod's just a nicer guy today than he used to be. And sometimes we don't even realize what we've become after we've just been harangued by the money monster for 20 years. That's not a good thing.
That's exactly where I was at, because I tell Cameron that sometimes. I'm like, man, in my 20s, I was brutal. I did not care about anything except for bottom line, pushing forward, doing all this stuff, and you end up just miserable, and you don't know why. And then even if you do succeed, you start to realize that all that success really doesn't mean very much. And now you go to therapy, because then you figure it out, and you start to realize okay, no, the whole point that I thought was the objective is not the objective, and is actually the success, and all these things are byproducts of what you should be doing, which is having some kind of purpose within your space, within life in general. But I won't go, the self-development route. In your business needs a purpose, needs an objective, needs that 12-quarter goal, and needs an exit. And so and this is for everybody here that's listening, if you don't have an exit plan, then you're missing an enormous component of your business, because fact of the matter is that the business it's either going to stop existing at some point, or it's going to be sold. Those are the two, options 99% of the time. You're not going to leave it to your kids, most likely. It's way too far in the future. And the way things are progressing, you don't have that much time. Because if you're not successful immediately, then you are going to have to find a job, or you're going to have to, start a different business to fund the other business. And it's just a horrible cycle. So on that note, why don't we talk about that program that you just ran that was super successful in 90 days, was it? You're almost done?
Oh, no. Which one are you talking about? The one where we made 6 figures of incremental?
Yes,
on ARR. Yeah, so that wasn't 90 days.
No,
Spoiler alert. Now, anything I say next is going to sound, it wasn't 90 days.
No. But it took more than 90 days.
Yeah, we got to get past this. Well, here, actually, that's a really good point, because kind of having 90-day thinking is a good thing for incremental gains, but thinking you're going to strike it rich in 90 days is absolutely it happens, but okay, let's be real, right? The most of us don't actually experience those kind of returns. Here's what we did. So one of the things, again, we were thinking, okay, how can we change our services? How can we offer different things that are actually going to make us money, as opposed to just basically, paid. And what we identified early on is that moving forward, we need leverage. We can't just basically put in time and energy and make more money, because it's linear, right? The more time we spend, the more effort we spend, we'll just make that much more money. So it's kind of it's a game of catch up, right? Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I started kind of becoming a little bit more familiar with was the teachings of Naval Ravikant. Are you familiar with Naval Ravikant?
No.
Okay, guys, anybody on this needs to look that guy up. And I can type it into the chat if you guys want, because it's kind of a weird spelling. So Naval basically says that, you got to take your inputs and you got to disconnect it from your outputs, right? So you got to basically look at the right leverage for your business. And he explained, so this is not my idea, but I'll just explain a little bit. So he explained 4 types of leverage. And the lowest level of leverage is your labor, right? It's like, I work, and with tools, I get better, right? So for example, as an individual, you apply AI to your tool set, and all of a sudden your leverage grows significantly, right? So tools generate leverage. Next, you can hire more people. That's another form of labor, right? But it's the oldest form of labor, and it requires permission. First of all, you got to be a good boss. You got to do all this other stuff, and it's expensive. Next level of leverage is capital. Capital is nice. That's money, and we need to go and grab it. Somebody has to give it to us, and that's lovely. But how many agencies actually attract capital investment? Very, very few, right? It's a service, right? It's not a product. It's not scalable. The next 2 pieces of leverage kind of form the top of the pyramid, and one of them is code and the other one is content. And so when we looked around, it's like, how can we, we're not software engineers, right? And we can make good content, though. We've done a lot of that. So how can we take our content that we've spent 20 years developing, and how can we layer that on code that, unfortunately, we're going to have to license it or buy it or, farm it out or, maybe white label it. And how can we connect those 2 and make money? Okay. So what we did is we looked at those 2 as the options, because we've done the people route. There's no way we're going to get capital. We don't have rich uncles, right? And code and content, right? Those are the 2 that remain. So I'll share it very openly. We looked at high level. I know you've had Sean on the program. I know you've had other people who relate to high level. They've appeared at lots of DM partner events. And so what we did is we jumped in. We bought the $297 a month deal, and essentially layered on a whole bunch of content. So email templates, SMS templates, social media templates, website funnel templates. How do we get this content? Well, we've been working for 20 years developing content for a very specific niche, right? So my niche, in case anybody is interested, it's not relevant to the story, but it's eye care practices. So it's guys who help you get rid of your glasses, whether you have laser eye surgery or whether you have like LASIK, or whether you have cataracts and you want to get rid of those glasses with cataracts as well. Okay. So those are they're doctors, they're clinics. And so we've been working with these guys for 20 years. We've been working inside the clinics, on the clinics, with the clinics. We know this really deeply. And so what we did is we took that really specific knowledge, created a bunch of templates that we knew worked really, really well, because we basically were doing that individually for every customer and just taking the template and just modifying it. And then took those and added them to high level and created a system. We put it on the market for $997 a month, $997, so it's £1,000 a month, which again, in your dollars works out to be, anybody do like a, I don't know, is it 1.6 or something? I don't know.
Yeah, there you go. $1,600.
Yeah, the answer to the question, LASIK does not work on amblyopia. Okay, just anyway. I know more about eyes. I know more about eyes than you ever want to know. The answer, I can definitively tell you, it does not work on amblyopia. Okay, so £997, right? And we basically sold it to our existing customers, right? So that's the thing, right? So you can do what I'm doing. Anybody can go to high level, pay the $297 and resell this. But if they don't have an existing customer base, they'd have to do ads, or they'd have to cold call, right? So they got to do some outreach. But with our existing customer base, we looked at it and we said, what's missing here? If we want to get into advisory services like FCMO, we are going to spend a lot of time telling them what they should do. Then they're going to come to us and they're going to say, that's great, thank you, great advice, but how do I actually do that thing, right? And we didn't want to do that thing because that makes very little margin, right? So what we did is we said, how about we get code to do that thing? And we basically took that, turned it into a product, and then now sell it for $997. And we just set ourselves a really small goal. Let's just get our 12 biggest customers onto the program, okay? And we did it. We did it in a year, right? So it took, it was little by little, right? Initially, it started off with 4. kind of trial ones, the ones who really, really trust you. They're right. They're like, oh, you got something new? Sure, I'll take it. Great. Okay. And we've all got something like that, right? Real believers. And then the rest of the 6 took a little while longer. Okay. But in the end of the year, we had 12. And today we make £13,000 every single month, monthly revenue retention. Okay. When you turn that into an annual figure, it's about 165,000. Is that right? Something like that. 165,000 annual retained revenue. Now we've got annual retained revenue. That was new, by the way. One of the other things that we realized after being 20 years in business is that basically we would generate a customer and lose another. And then we generate another customer and we'd lose another. And it was like cycle of churn, right? So churn, basically, for everybody who doesn't know, is what happens to your revenue when it goes bye-bye. And you basically are just kind of like, recycling and hamster wheeling it forever, right? Roller coaster, boom and bust, feast and famine, all that good stuff that we know we should never have, right? So I remember the Height put out a report, right? 8% monthly revenue churn, 68% or something like that annual basis, right? $6,400 lost every single month by agencies making 40 million or more. Sorry, 40,000 a month or more. A lot, right? Now I know those stats out of the back of my hand. Why? Because we are so churn focused. Now we've completely changed our game. Instead of going out and selling, now we retain. Retention is now the answer. And it actually has worked really, really well. So instead of, we've taken people in our agency and we've turned them into customer success managers. We've taken a page out of software, SaaS, and basically made sure that these people really understood how to keep customers happy so that we could keep them for an estimated time period of potentially 5 years. That is our goal, 60 months on our product. Now, if I take the product that we've sold so far, 12 customers this year, 24 customers next year, again, just one a month, right? I'm not stressing out the sales, right? I'm just keeping it nice and easy, right? Because I don't want to create this massive pressure on selling, because we only really want customers that fit. We don't want customers that are like, you oversold me, or this thing wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and then they churn. That's not what we want. We're so anti-churn. So 24 customers by the end of this year, we're on target. That will result in a considerably more amount of annual retained revenue, but on a 5-year LTV, lifetime value, taking out the margin, right? Just the margin, we're looking at 4 million just from those customers alone.
Fantastic.
Dependable. I like that. That's good, right?
It's so funny because I gave a presentation a few weeks ago at the Commitment Summit, and that was one of my points. I'm like, I know we're not SaaS companies, but you need a recurring revenue model. Like, it's just the model that we all go through this, and it's totally normal, just so everybody knows, like, that your capacity is like this much, and then you get new clients, and then you can't do sales, and it dives, and then it's just this pattern, and it's very hard to get off of when you're really dependent on making that sale every single month to even your existing clients, where they could just fire you all the time, and there's no reason for them to stay, and it's miserable. So I think the high level is really the future, because if you can't and the other thing is that the setup is the most expense, right? And so we're actually, as marketers, we go in, we do the hardest part first, and then everybody's like, oh, well, you did the hard part, so we don't need you anymore. We have an internal team, we're going to internalize this, and sorry, see you later. So
absolutely. And in my view, the biggest returns for them as customers end up down the pipe, right? Like, it's just like investment, right? It's like little return. Oh, is it working yet? No, it's not working. Oh, is it working now? A little bit better. And then all of a sudden, boom, right? Because all of a sudden everything's in place, right? They got their, the flywheel's spinning. They have the phones being answered. They're responding to leads. The ads, we've finally figured out what works, which messages work, which channels work. We finally honed down and prioritized everything to the point where, like, this is the winning formula. And then all of a sudden those compound interest responds and pays them big time. And they go, wow, you guys are amazing. in reality, yeah, well, we worked at being amazing for a few months and many, many months, but what really helped you was time, right? It's like you're patient. It's like basically just do this thing, then shut up and be patient. If they, if people just understood that phrase, it's like they'd be all millionaires. And that's actually a verified fact, right? Like, so yeah, I mean, it's all the biggest returns in life come from compound interest, right? Whether it's fitness, whether it's money management, whether it's relationships, all the biggest returns come from being patient and just taking the long view and just reaping the rewards way, 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 way into the future. Unfortunately, our minds aren't really built to think that way because we just think about what's
they haven't been.
No, haven't been. No. I mean, we got 200,000 years of evolution telling us, no, where do I get my next meal?
Oh, that's so true. Wow. But, specifically with the, the way marketing has worked over the last 10, 15 years, this kind of commoditization of everything that we do. And then it's like, no, I need instant results. And if you can't show them, I'm going to find somebody who will. And then everybody's thinking about, selling their company right off the bat, and it's just been the cycle. I hate to say it, but it's greed. Greed was the driver and the need and want for immediate results. And if you can't get those, then you're wasting your time.
And look, it's not a good story to tell people, yeah, so like imagine a TV show, right? It's like, look at a TV show of me running my agency. It's like, just like, it looks boring, right? It's every day, it's kind of the same thing. It's not, I'm not making $1 million deals today and like, doing the Mad Men pitches tomorrow. It's not good TV. And that's the thing. It's like, like life is not good TV. And that's why it doesn't really attract us. It doesn't make us excited, right? So the reality should be, it's like, hey, do the boring work, right? Do the relentless, ongoing, unsexy stuff that doesn't necessarily pay off tomorrow, but that pays off in like 18 months, 24 months, 36 months. Think that way. And when you do that, I mean, that applies to niching too. I mean, if there's one thing we did right, and I can count them on a few fingers. If there's one thing we did right, is we niched. And like we are hyper niched. And one of the great outcomes of that is that we've always been in demand because there's very few that compete with us. We take up a lot of space in our little market, right? We get invited to speak at the events. We write for the magazines. My LinkedIn posts are followed by surgeons, my perfect ideal market, because no one else is talking about what I'm talking about in their business. And I just get the credibility and the reputation of being invested in what they're invested in. And 20 years later, that really starts to pay off. And that's why, honestly, most of the customers that we've got over the last 10 years have just come to us without any marketing, because again, we didn't have any margin to market. So they just came to us. Why? From word of mouth and just knowing that we're the ones to go to in this industry. So, and it's also helped us charge much higher fees. I mean, the only reason, honestly, it's not because I'm brilliant. The reason I can charge $4,000 a month for my advisory services is because I'm so rare in terms of knowing what I know, right? And like, could I necessarily go out and do this for general business? Maybe, maybe not. But the point is that I can for this business because very, very few people have invested what I've invested into this niche. And so they trust me, right? They know I'm not just like some fly-by-nighter.
No, and that's such a good point, because I've been pushing niching forever, and it's difficult for people to understand. But, and I forget who told me this, but he said that the generalist in any industry is never the highest earner, because anybody could be a generalist. You could serve everybody, and that's what you do. But once you get to the specialty, then you get to systematize and automate and do all these things that actually get results. Plus, it makes you an authority in that specific space. And I was related to like healthcare, where it's like, hey, you're having heart problems. Do you want to go to the regular family doctor or the cardiovascular specialist? It's like, well, I want to go to the specialist, of course. Yeah. It's my heart. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
It's the same with marketing, especially because, and people, wow, your ability to talk to people just becomes so much easier because you know exactly what they're going through. You could relate it to case studies that are, exactly the situation that they need, because you just served, the person down the street with the exact same issue. And now the whole process is easy, fun, and you're a professional without even trying. You're not trying to, be the expert. You just are, because you put the time in. So
I talk to my customers about niching all the time. They're always scared, because again, people go, "Ooh, what will I have to give up?" Right? They don't think about what do I have
everybody.
to do? Yeah. I don't want to say no to customers. That's money. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, you can keep doing that, and you literally will never be rich, right? So, I mean, what do they say? You say it well in the American accent. It's like the riches are in the niches, right?
Yes.
Like that. We can't say that so well as Canadians, or because or people. Yeah, the riches and niches. Yeah, doesn't quite work so well. But yeah, no, absolutely. That's a key learning. And the other thing too is that we would not have been able to create this product for our customers if we weren't niched, right?
Exactly.
Because yeah, in answer to your question, I'll answer it as I go. Basically, we've been in this business for 20 years. And yeah, we started there at the beginning. I actually started inside an eye clinic, helping it start up, answering phones, basically talking to patients, assisting in theater, like in operating theaters. No joke. Yeah. I mean, wow. I basically, like, when you're new to this thing, you're just going to do anything, right? So, but yeah, I mean, that's what gave me total, cradle to grave view on this business. And that's what allows me to be able to speak with my customers from a position of like, I'm your partner on this stuff, not some outsider who's like, hey, this is what you should do, and I worked for Nike and I worked for, whatever big brand. And now I've got the ideas for you here. That doesn't work. It's like, they don't care about that. They care about, who have you helped that I know? That's what's most important to them, right? But yeah, exactly. The product was only able to be done because we were niched, because we could create those templates that we'd used again and again and again. We were able to A/B test all those templates, choose the best ones, and we continue to do so because we now have them implemented in lots and lots of different practices, and then we can update across the board the better performing ones.
Exactly. Well, and every use case that you have for one client is going to apply to all the other clients potentially. So you always have something to upsell or maintain the relationship, because you could be like, oh yeah, we just did this for a business down the street. It was a 90-day campaign. It just crushed. And we're wondering if you want to do that too. It's going to cost an extra, $250 a month. And there you go.
Yeah.
Easy sell.
Exactly.
And not even a sell. You're just telling them about stuff that happens. So
exactly. You're like, oh, I want that.
Yeah, like, oh, well, that's exactly like me. And now you have a use case. And now since you have so much data on a single niche, now you could do your own case studies and your own
benchmarking.
Exactly. Yeah. And like you said, the height report, that's exactly what happened with them, because I was like, oh, you guys have access to like thousands of your clients' data. Like, could you put together a report about how that works? And it was like, oh,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this is how our accountants sold us. They keep putting out benchmark reports for agencies, and we were like, oh man, these guys know their agency, right? And it helps. Benchmarking is definitely something we want to eventually do, because we have access, because of High Level, we have access to all their data, literally from the moment a lead enters the system all the way to the moment they become a patient, because it's a CRM and they pay money. So now we're even able to actually track not just cost per lead, but cost per sale. And there's nothing more convincing than these ads got you these patients, like literally, like connect the dots, right? I mean, there's no way they're going to say no to your paid traffic anymore. So, I mean, that's super good. The most recent thing that we've been doing that you're probably really interested in is an AI booking bot. So that thing is kicking butt.
Really? Like, is it actually talking to them, or is it just a chat bot, like a text chat?
So yeah, basically it's so High Level offers like a web chat widget, right? And that basically is standard in their package. And you can just put the web chat. It's a little like kind of like a live chat on the bottom right hand side of the corner. And the difference in it, however, is that if you type into that web chat widget, it responds to your SMS, which is lovely, because even if I leave the website, right, I'm definitely going to keep this around, right? So I'm going to be on my phone, right? So it helps with maintaining connection with that lead. And now we've put in an AI booking bot powered by OpenAI, the proud fathers of ChatGPT. And now this AI booking bot converses with that lead with the mission and aim of getting that person to book an appointment utilizing the dates from the online booking calendar in high level. So basically what it's doing is it's reading the calendar and saying, we got this date and that date, right? Basically, it's acting like a salesperson. And so when would you like to come in? Oh, maybe Monday, or, maybe August, and it just basically hones in on those dates and gives them options. And the beauty of this is that actually we're seeing better conversion rates from the bot than we do on the online calendar. Why? Because the online calendar is obviously a machine, right? You select a date, you select a time, you press submit, you have no emotional investment. The bot, on the other hand, feels like a person. You've asked it some questions, it's answered back, it takes a little bit of time to respond. It even has a name. Hi, I'm Hattie. And it actually books you an appointment. And now you feel a little more committed because now Hattie's waiting for you at the practice, right? Hattie's obviously in all of our practices. So at the end of the day, Hattie's a lovely character, but we just use it to attribute, right? It's like, oh, I just was talking to Hattie online, and yeah, she did me a solid and answered my questions. Awesome. And that's the booking bot. And now it's just, it's motoring through. So that's an excellent use of AI in high level.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think that all website, this is going to become a pretty standard expectation of customers. So it's not even it's not going to be special in 12 months, because if you don't have these things, if you can't make everything, I call it stupid, simple experiences. And so if you can't provide a stupid, simple experience where you're essentially delivering exactly what you offered, like right now, which in your case is the chatbot actually, saying the appointment for the next step, people are going to be like, I don't know, this is too much work. I have to find a contact form. I have to look at my calendar. I have to look at your calendar. No, this is so much work. And so I think with the, evolution of AI and just the ability to do programming almost for free a lot of the times, that if you can't deliver this level of experience for customers, people are just they're not going to waste their time with you. So I think your whole model is fantastic, and the fact that you niche. Now, I will say, for people who are generalists that have, can't limit their industries that they serve to less than 5, how do you suggest they go about deciding on which industry they should really focus on and get off the hamster wheel?
Best way I can do it is probably do an example. So, we, in the past, we had numerous sectors that we did dabble into because we got greedy. And basically what we did, hey, we did exactly the mistakes that we tell people not to do now. So we were in eyes for the first, say about 3 years. And then we were like, okay, you know what? This eye thing is good, but there's so few customers compared to all the other customers out there who are kind of lateral jumps. And say, for example, plastic surgeons, dentists, chiropractors, and so on and so forth, you name it, right? So we started dabbling into those other areas. And what we found is we ended up spending a little bit more time on each of those, right? Because we had to always teach our team, what is a tummy tuck? What is, what do they do in chiropractic, right? What's a hair replacement? How does that work? So it's and when you're making content, you got to know that stuff inside out. And I know a lot of agencies, hop from, sector to sector to sector, and that's great. The thing is that when you're writing medical content, you got to have your stuff together, right? You can't, there's no mistakes. And also these surgeons are perfectionists, right? They think, if my surgery is going to be perfect, then everything in my world has to be equally perfect. It doesn't, but that's what they think. And therefore what matters.
They're practicing that all the time. It's like, I used to work with orthodontists, and they were the same way, where it's just I need exactly the spacing like this on the website.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Of course, that makes sense. Yeah, of course.
Well, I think, and you said something, and I hate to say this to everybody, because it's I've tried a million different ways to convince people that they need to niche, and I think your explanation of if you don't have the niche, you're not going to have the professionalism that you need to even serve any of the industries. Yeah. Not having a niche is greedy.
Yeah,
and that's a big statement. But honestly, if you say, I'm going to collect money from everybody, and I'm not a specialist, I don't know your industry, I don't know anything about what you do, but I'm going to serve you anyway, like I do, you're being greedy. And it's a hard pill to swallow for people, but that's the way the majority work. And just so everybody knows, if you want to be a completely custom agency and you could do all the research and blah, 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 then you're a high-end agency. And that's what you do. You do high-end, limited amount of projects that are super labor intensive, that have no systemization because you're, creating everything from scratch. And that's fine too, but you're making a decision to do that by not niching. And if that's not your intention to be, hey, I'm super custom, super niche, if instead what you're doing is like, oh, I could serve everybody and I'm going to charge, the minimum amount, then I'm sorry, you're being greedy. Like that's the only explanation for it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that, and I get it, right? Like, I get it. Like, I understand the need to put food on the table. So to answer your question, what do you do if you got multiple niches? Basically, you compare them. Which one do you love? Which one do you really relate to? Who do you like, right? Like, we realized I hope there's no dentists on this call, but
I had the same experience.
We didn't really like dentists, right? Like, there was something about them. I can't even put my finger on it, but like, I really didn't meet many that I really enjoyed working with. And we were working a little bit with some cosmetic surgeons, and some of them were a little bit questionable in their ethics, and in terms of like, the whole idea of cosmetic surgery, hey, all the power to you if that's what you want to do. But some of them were kind of like, well, I can help solve all your problems with this surgery. I'm sorry, but that's just not going to happen. That's why we kind of decided, ethically and also personally, I ended up having laser eye surgery. My mom had laser eye surgery. My partner's dad had laser eye surgery. We were invested. We were our own niche's customers. And when your own niche's customers, well, guess what? You're big time invested in that niche. And your level of conviction for the quality of that product just goes sky high, because you are a customer. You benefited from it. Your life was transformed by it. That's the definition of promotion, right? It's like, people going out there saying nice things about you, they'll be asked. That's what we do, right? So of course, we do it for money. but the point being is that it helps to have your heart in it, right? Like, if you're going to spend so much time working, you might as well be doing something that doing something that you enjoy, doing it with people that you like, and ending up developing a product or helping a service that actually makes people's lives better, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the things we decided is, okay, we want to make 150 practices double, right? Well, we also have a 3-year mission. And our 3-year mission is not just the amount of money we want to make or the amount of profit we want to make. It's also, we want to help transform 10,000 lives. But it's not our customers' lives, it's our customers' lives. It's the patients. So if we can focus our team on that, then they really have a guiding principle on how to develop content, how to create experiences, how to speak to avatars in such a way where they think to themselves, if I want to hit that mission of transforming 10,000 lives, how do I go about doing that? What's the decision to take today? And that's really, really helped. The other thing too is, like, people want a purpose, like, money is not everything. Even though, as much as they'll tell you, it's like, I want to raise cost of living, blah, blah, blah. I get it. But money is limited in terms of its ability to inspire, right? Yes. Once you have enough to pay basics, you're good, right? Now, it's purpose that makes a difference. And that's what actually we found really, really inspires our people to actually do better work.
I love that. Yeah. And I love your point about the money side, because guess what happens when you do hit that goal of whatever money that you want to make? You're going to come up with a higher goal. And not only that, but you're going to adjust your living to whatever, income level you got to. And so that's really, you're in the same spot. So I think that, and the other side is that the motivation is temporary. So if you don't have, something that you like doing based on the principle and the result that you're providing, then it's going to be temporary as well. You're going to, I'm bored with that, I'm moving on. And it's like, no, that's something you really care about, helping people see. That's a good mission. I had LASIK, I think 8 years ago. No, I moved to Texas, so that was probably like 8 years ago. That's crazy. But it was life-changing, because I had super bad allergies and I could never, I had to wear my glasses all the time. I couldn't wear my contacts and I hated it. So it is, I think your inspiration. I think that's a really good explanation of why you should niche, how the systems actually integrate to it, and how, thinking about the exit and thinking about, the next 12 quarters really changes your perspective and your margin. Yeah, man, we talked about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Excellent. I think that was excellent content. Thank you so much, Rod. Where can people learn about you and your business?
Well, we have a company called LiveseySolar, so it's hard to spell. It's liveseysolar.com. But most of the content on there is designed specifically for our avatars, our refractive surgeons. You can follow me on LinkedIn. Rod Solar is pretty easy to find. You see my face now. So, but yeah, I talk about what I think all the time with my customers. I attempt to glean as much as I possibly can from the books I read, the videos I watch, the experiences I have with you guys, who I'm so indebted to. You guys have been amazing. I've been a CP for, now I think it's probably been 4 or 5 years. And you guys have helped transform our business. And I couldn't be more grateful. It's just been such a fantastic experience being part of the community, getting help, giving help, and now Founders Board. So it's just leveling up, and we're just really, really enjoying that ride. So yeah, anyway, LinkedIn is where you can find me. That's where I talk mostly and spend most of my time when I'm on social media.
All the time. That's
all the time. 24/7. You just can't stop. No.
Well, thank you so much, Rod, and we really appreciate you being part of the Certified Partner community. Just so everybody knows, if you are interested in a Certified Partner, just go to our website, and you can learn more just by looking at the directory. We actually list all of our Certified Partners on there, so you can see their specialties and who they serve, and hopefully their niche. That's actually where the whole talk started with Certified Partner. Was you have to choose 3 maximum, and I think I might change that eventually to 1 maximum. But it's I think you're a perfect example of what's possible. And just so everybody knows, the only reason why we're able to make Certified Partner effective is because we have people like Rod who are in the community, delivering content, coming on the shows, and sharing their successes. So I hope for your continued success, and thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, everybody, for your attention. It's the most valuable gift you can give me. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you all, and we'll see you next week.